everybody, this is Jennifer with Genealogy Technology, and today is part 2 of Your Ancestors Are Lying to You. So last week I talked about how ancestors might lie and how to go about detecting that in your own records. This week I'm going to go over some examples of how people might lie or not tell the truth on records. First of all, names. It was a little bit easier to reinvent yourself back in the day, because we weren't followed around by paper trails and social security numbers and things like that. However, just before you think that anybody could just go to the next town and change their name, that's really not true. People back in the day, especially in smaller areas, were really wary of strangers. So you might have to have letters of introduction or letters of credit and things like that. So it wasn't all that easy to change your name, though maybe like in the US, you could go out west to the gold rush or somewhere like that and just, become a totally new person. So that is one thing people might lie about or change is their name. Another reason they might lie about their name or unknowingly tell an untruth to you in the record is say maybe they had been married before. So for a woman that's been married before, for example, you might see the marriage record and say that her name is Linda Johnson. Like, oh, okay, well, her maiden name was Johnson. Well, really, no, she had been married before. So really, her maiden name is not Johnson. And that could send you barking up the wrong tree for this family of Johnsons that's really not related to you at all. Another name-related thing that's not a lie at all, but something you need to look out for, so I thought I would mention it here, is when somebody changes their name or the name that they go by as they grow up. For example, Polly is a nickname for Mary. So someone could go maybe by Polly as a little kid, and then when she grows up, she's suddenly going by Mary. Now you might think this is a totally different person, or the other way around from Mary to Polly. Another example that I see a lot is a man going by his first name or his middle name when he's little and then changing to his other name when he's grown. I'm not exactly sure why people did that. It's almost like, I wonder if it was a rite of passage to say, I'm not John anymore, now I'm Henry. But it happened, so be on the lookout for it. People may also lie about their age. They may lie to get into the army, I talked about in the last video, or to maybe get out of a draft. They may lie to get some kind of age-related benefit. So for example, today it would be maybe Social Security. You have to be a certain age before you get Social Security. Oh, but one thing I should mention is don't worry too much about ages on a census. Now, in an ideal world, every age would be correct. But oftentimes you're going to see things off by a few years. It could be true that your ancestor really doesn't know or remember how old they are. But a lot of times what happens in censuses is that the informant is somebody else. So grandma lives there and the daughter-in-law is the one giving the information to the census taker, and she guesses grandma's about 70. So that kind of thing can happen. Be on the lookout for that when it comes to ages. The parentage of children. Now, throughout history, we have seen examples of maybe, a daughter has a child without being married and that child is raised by the grandparents. Or maybe the child is raised by, siblings, aunts, uncles, or it's fostered out. So back in the day, we may see someone mentioned in a will or mentioned on a census and use a leap of logic that person is a child of the person we think is their mother or father, but really maybe they were a grandchild or a cousin who came to live with the family or something like that. Also, people who were born when their parents weren't married may want to hide their own parentage. Maybe they're ashamed of that. They live in a very moral community, and this was very common back in the day. For example, a local historian here in Cherokee County, Mr. Bob Lipscomb, he recently told a story to the Cherokee Historical Society about a woman who they think probably sabotaged their church's minutes by tearing out a page because it showed that she herself was born when her parents weren't married. Now, there are a lot of marriage-related lies. Imagine that. But what I mean is people might sometimes lie about their number of marriages. Maybe they don't want their new spouse to know about a mistake they made when they were 18 or 19. You also hear a lot of stories about people lying and saying they were a widow or a widower when actually they were divorced, or maybe they just lost track of their spouse. For example, say, the spouse abandons the family. They might later say, yeah, I'm divorced or I'm a widower, even though you may find that spouse living off in California territory somewhere. Some people also lied about whether they were in fact technically married at all. And technically, I just mean like legally, they went to the courthouse and got a marriage certificate and had marriage banns read and all that stuff. Back in the day, especially on the frontier and very remote places, a lot of marriage was common law. People might get married, the next time they come to town, they might already have a couple of kids before they technically get married. So keep an eye out for things like that. Also, if you have enslaved ancestors, keep in mind that through much of slavery, enslaved people were not allowed to get married. So they might, once again, have an informal ceremony. They might jump the broom, which is a common custom. They might have a bunch of children together, but they never got married down at the courthouse. And on the other hand, a lot of times after emancipation, you will see couples who were formerly enslaved getting married, even though maybe they've been really together, years and years and years. Military service or military family members. So ever since the Revolutionary War, the United States has been giving benefits to soldiers and sometimes their heirs. That could be a pension to last them through their old age, or it could be actual land out west somewhere. Of course, these are very valuable benefits, and it might be in somebody's interest to say, oh, this guy, I know he was my uncle, but I'm just going to say he was my father, and that way I can get his land grant and go out west. So look for things like that. The next reason is eligibility for money or benefits. Maybe not military related, but there's some other sort of pile of money out there that people want a part of. A good example, and one that I've run into a lot in my research, is after the Cherokee removal. So the Cherokee removal was in the 1830s, and about 60 years later, this thing was all tangled up in courts and things like that. But it was discovered that the Cherokee people who were removed and their descendants were owed money. So once again, this was 60 years later. So there were some people who were thinking, yeah, my grandma, she was a Cherokee and she was removed. And, they may really not know that. Maybe they've been told that their whole life, or maybe they are desperate and they are kind of going on a rumor and think that, yeah, maybe I can, get some of this money for myself. So that's one reason that people might, they might see sort of a big, gold mine out there and either, truly think that they are entitled to some of that money, or think that, hey, everybody else is getting some of this money, why not me? The next reason your ancestor may have lied is about their religion. So for example, say your ancestor grew up in an unpopular religion, or a religion that's just not practiced around where they live now. Or maybe they grew up in a religious tradition that had sort of died out. So we know about anti-Semitism, anti-Catholic sentiment in the U.S., anti-Muslim sentiment now that people just need to get over. But even back in the day, after the Protestant Reformation, there were all these little splinter groups of different Protestant religions, like Baptists and Methodists. We know those, they've really flourished. But there were other ones that maybe, were not so popular, and so maybe your relative was in that religion, or maybe for whatever reason they were not in that religion and they told an untruth that they were. It is important to sort of know what was going on in the religious life of your ancestors' community at that time, so you can be on the lookout for these. And last but not least is nationality. So throughout the history of this country and every country, there have been reasons to sort of hide or lie about the fact that you are from a certain country or area. One big example that's pretty recent that I have a funny story about is Germany. So World War I, World War II, of course, we went to war with Germany, and there was a lot of anti-German sentiment. Well, in the 90s, when I first started doing genealogy, this was back in the day when people still wrote each other letters and sent each other printouts. And I remember talking to someone who just swore up and down, I think they handed me a printout is what it was. It's probably still around here somewhere. They swore up and down that this family, the Rhines and the Stroops and all these names, were Dutch. They were not German. Now, they weren't technically German because they did come here to this country before the unification of Germany, but where they came from was definitely in what is now Germany. But this person, probably from some internalized dislike of German people due to a war that had happened 50 years ago at that point, had decided to change the story and say that this family was Dutch. So just be on the lookout for that. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching my video about why your ancestors might have lied to you in the past. This has been Jennifer with genealogytechnology.com. I really appreciate you liking this video and hitting the subscribe button. Subscribers help me make more videos like this, and I truly appreciate it. Thanks so much.